Hello and welcome to today's news analysis. We are doing the Indian Express papers Chandigarh edition. Now you can see the topics that we are going to focus. Now the most important amongst them is this article on India Stack or digital public infrastructure. India has been marketing this and promoting this across the world. So this has been explained today. So we have good information about this. What are the key constituents of India's stack or digital public infrastructure? How India is marketing it, and why is it doing so? So we get a thorough analysis. I think you should make a note of this topic. I have posted it on the Instagram also, and I think I should do it on the Telegram channel as well. Okay, so this topic is important. Then there is this long interview, one-page interview of N.K. Singh. He's a very important person when it comes to financial matters, fiscal policy of a country. So now why this interview is there? Because N.K. Singh is heading the expert panel on reforming the multilateral development banks. And he will be submitting his report to the G20, an influential grouping. So we are getting over here the main points that I'm saying. What I've tried to do is getting the reforms that are needed for the multilateral development banks. Now this topic will be, if asked, it will come in your GS2 paper. Although we're talking about banks, but it is mainly IR. And if you see the previous years, it is GS2. Okay, so this is important. Then from pre point of view, Urban Infrastructure Development Fund, something new. It was there in the news, recently announced in the recent budget. So that is important. Plus G20 countries to showcase their heritage. So again, pre-based questions may be asked. Okay, so let's move on to the front page. So Aditya L1 is again there in the news. This is the spacecraft India has sent to study the sun. Aditya itself implies sun. L1 means Lagrange point 1. So it is the point of equilibrium where the centripetal force and the gravitational force are the same. So at this point, the satellite would tend to remain at the same position vis-a-vis the sun. Okay, now this has 7 payloads to study the sun. So they are basically putting an observatory device close to the sun so that there is minimum distortion in measurements. Now with payloads, as I have told you earlier also, the best approach would be visit the Aditya L1 website or ISRO website, and there we can easily get the payloads. So focus there, don't search in the newspaper, it will take you a lot of time. Okay, so this was the N.K. Singh interview that I was saying, it will come later. So now coming to the interview by Prime Minister Modi. So I've written as to, what is India doing to become Vishwaguru or India's leadership in the world order. Maybe we could have framed it that way also. So yeah, so rare interview. Okay. So he's saying that India has played a pivotal role in the world affairs. It has responded well to the economic crisis. So the slowdown or the recession-like scenario that was there previously, India has been able to manage it well. India also managed the pandemic. It provided the world access to vaccines. So it showed leadership in vaccines. Vaccine Mitra initiative was also there, right? So India played a very important role. In fact, India's model of development, he's calling it as human-centric development. So this is something that the world can learn from. Now, I would like to add certain points to human-centric development. So development that is centered on improving the quality of life of the human being. So that is how we can put it. We can also call for inclusive development, that everybody is benefited. And Prime Minister Modi calls it Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. Okay, so human-centric development, we have talked about pandemic and economic challenges. Besides, what has India done recently? There was in the G20 summit, India has made a case for adding African Union or Africa Union to the G20. So this will further improve the voice of the global south in the world affairs. Okay, now we're talking about Africa Union. So let's read about it. Here it is mentioning as African Union. It makes sense, African Union. Okay. So we should know the basic things. African Union is a continental bloc. It is having 55 member states. Some countries are suspended, which are marked in this light green color. Okay. It was announced as a result of Sirte Declaration. Sirte is in Libya. So Sirte Declaration is associated with which of the following? Four options are given to you. Right. Okay, so this was in 1999. Now the bloc is having two headquarters. So one is Addis Ababa, which is in Ethiopia, in the capital, and Johannesburg, South Africa. By the way, Johannesburg Declaration is also there. That was with reference to expansion of the BRICS. Okay. Now African Union replaced the Organization of African Unity. Now moving on. The motto of this is a united and strong Africa, and anthem is let us all unite and celebrate together. Okay, so I think this is sufficient. These things, themes, etc. are asked. So what India has done with that leadership thing, that's all. Okay. Now the next part, it's basically saying that it's congratulating the Prime Minister through the questions that G20 has been spread out across the country, which is a good thing actually. G20 is not taking place merely in Delhi, but almost I go wherever I go, I see something to do with G20 over there. Some business summit is taking place in Jaipur, something is taking place in Hyderabad. So the various activities of the G20 has been spread across, which is a very, very good thing. So it's been spread out. The more stakeholders over here, which is good. Okay, so that has been the policy of Prime Minister. That's what he's saying over here. Besides G20, so it's not in Delhi alone. Then with BRICS also they did it. Eighth BRICS summit took place in Goa. Then the second FIPIC summit took place involving many Pacific islands, happened in Jaipur. Yes. So that's it. Now, because of this spreading of this G20, one of the benefits you can see over here, highways to health centers, railway stations, they have been modernized. So whichever places G20 was to take place, those things have been modernized. Their infra has improved. In fact, there is a mention of Khajuraho. Khajuraho again is very famous from medieval history point of view, art and culture, for the famous temple. And Khajuraho also reflects, the maturity of the Nagada style of temple architecture. Okay. So now coming back to this article. So Khajuraho, if anybody had a serious ailment, even a heart issue, so one had to travel 45 kilometers to Chhatarpur, where they could get medical experts. But because something is happening in Khajuraho, something elsewhere, so it has led to creation of medical facilities in these areas also. So this is a good thing because of the spread out. It has actually led to improvement in urban infra in many ways. Today I'm not covering one nation, one election. Yesterday I did it. Right, I will keep doing it again and again so that we are able to recall it. So today basically we are getting the viewpoint of Mr. Khadge, who's from the opposition. He's saying that it is an effort to dismantle the federal structure. Its basic point is that you are integrating election of the Lok Sabha with the state assembly election. So in a way you are affecting the federal structure. Okay, moving to the next article. First set of infra loans for tier 2, tier 3 cities to be disbursed soon. This is an important topic. Infra loans for creating urban infrastructure. Very, very important theme. In fact, urban infrastructure in itself is a very, very important topic. And for that, for creation of urban infra, we need long-term capital or long tenure capital, where you can keep giving in slow this thing. You need lot of money, lot of capital is needed, spread over a long tenure of time at the concessional interest rate, so that the borrower is not burdened by the interest rate. The idea is that infrastructure should be created. So in the fiscal year 2024, the recent budget basically, the union government started the Urban Infrastructure Development Fund. It will meet the requirements of urban infrastructure, the capital requirements, and it will provide money to tier 2 and tier 3 cities also. The interest rate is roughly 1% less than the bank rate. So what the banks are offering, 1 to 1.5% less than that. So it will provide low cost loans. Now the UIDF, who is operating it? It will be operated or executed by the National Housing Board. Here it is mentioned. Right, so National Housing Board. Now I'm giving you homework. Is this a statutory body? Please check and confirm. Now, what are the tasks? For what all things are covered for getting loans from the UIDF? So this includes water supply, sanitation, construction of roads, comprehensive area development, local area planning for decongestion, and heritage conservation. Right, all of this. But you cannot borrow money if you are engaging in maintenance work. For example, a sewage line is already there for merely maintaining it. So that is not a capital thing, it's a revenue expenditure that you are doing. Payment of salaries. So for all those things, you cannot borrow. Running of urban transport. So routine things you cannot borrow. Only for creating new assets can you borrow from the Urban Infrastructure Development Fund, which is run by National Housing Board. Now talking about the urban infrastructure, there is another bonds known as Munci bonds or municipality bonds. So municipalities can also borrow for meeting its financial needs and to create urban infrastructure. Municipalities are urban by its very definition. Okay. G20 venue to showcase the heritage of 29 nations. So India requested the members plus other people who are there, other countries, not members, but they are invited or observers to bring at least one item. To bring at least one item to India to showcase to the world. So again, it's very PM Modi thing actually. Okay, so some of the things have been mentioned, so I'll just cover those. So we have one Qing dynasty jar from China, 18th century. We have a copy of 13th century Magna Carta. What is this 13th century Magna Carta? This is important. This is the Royal Charter of Rights agreed to by King John of England at Windsor on June 15th, 1215. So this is, you must know about this. Okay. So British England, there was monarchy. King had complete control, but there was a bit of an instability during the time of King John, which is 1215. 13th century means 1200s. Okay. So at this time, the king was compelled to give certain freedoms and liberties to the feudatories, the church, etc. And gradually, the parliamentary system emerged like that. The House of Lords, the House of Commons. The House of Lords is what? The House of Lords, feudal lords. Okay, so that's how the parliamentary thing started. The king's powers were contained, and eventually it ended up with a constitutional monarchy in the present form. Then we have the Mona Lisa painting, which will be showcased in the digital format. Then we have Gutenberg Bible, earliest major book printed from Germany. Then we have a statue, Kotlikyu statue, which is an Aztec sculpture from Mexico. And this Kosode garment from Japan. So you can see this. Okay. Just a second. I thought I'll cover this women's safety thing, but we'll do it some other time. And failed in ensuring women's safety, says Amit Shah, targeting Gehlot government, but I think both of them have failed. Okay, now we come to the editorial and the opinion section. So first, I'm not doing this. SEBI must answer. This is about concerns with regarding Adani Group. The stock market manipulation done by Adani, something has been there in the news. SEBI is the regulator for stock markets. So they should have been able to curtail all this. And maybe this practice of insider trading and manipulating the prices of the share may be rampant. And SEBI, as the watchdog of the stock market, should do much more than it is doing. Then this one again, I'm not doing. This is with reference to the Mumbai meeting of the India group. Now, what we are doing is, we are doing this article. This is concerning agriculture and G20. Actually, whenever we see this person with this image, Ashok Gulati, it's agriculture. And when we see him, Vikram Mehta, he's basically with with the climate change and what we should be doing, energy transition. So his articles are centered around that. Okay, so we'll just summarize this. Can countries come up with a model and time frame to make agriculture less damaging to the planet? So as integrated agriculture with climate change and other issues like use of fertilizers, pesticides, etc. Okay. Fine. So in Hyderabad, there was a meeting had taken place with reference to G20, which is known as the Deccan High Level Principle. So some agreements had come forth in June 15, June 17 summit. Right. So we all know G20 is having multiple meetings across multiple sectors. So one of them was agriculture, which was in Hyderabad. So there they have come up with this principle, the priorities which countries must abide by. So that is facilitate humanitarian assistance to countries. There are countries which may not be having food. They may be having food shortage, etc. So supply them food. Enhance availability and access to nutritious food and food safety nets. I think both basically same. We should follow climate resilient and sustainable agriculture. Climate resilient and sustainable agriculture, sometimes it is also referred to as climate smart agriculture. Okay. Resilience and inclusivity in agriculture. Then following a One Health approach, that is animal health and human health should be seen as one, because what is affecting animal may affect you also. Then the use of digital technology. Digital technology could be anything, market related infrastructure being provided to farmers in the apps, giving them guidance as to what should be cultivated, what would be the best market rates. So that could be there. Or it could be space technology that is providing forecast and updates about the climate and so anything. Precision agriculture, that can also be there. So digital technology, and lastly investments in agriculture. And we should have public-private investments. Right, so all these goals are there. Most importantly, the goal of sustainable agriculture. Now he's saying that on one hand, India is having the leadership and India is saying that we should be doing this. But India's position is not tenable when it comes to climate resilient agriculture and sustainable practices. So why? Because we are procuring at the MSP, minimum support price. A minimum support price has led to skewed system of agriculture. It is incentivizing cultivation of paddy and wheat. Paddy is being grown in the semi-arid areas of Punjab, Haryana, and because of that, the water table is depleting. Right? More use of pesticides are taking place. Pesticides and fertilizers. They are eventually entering into the food chain, and as a result of this, we are seeing incidents of many cancer cases. Okay, pollution is taking place. Pollution of land, water, air. So these are problematic, and this we need to correct. Besides, so we need to correct. How do we do it? We need to repurpose agri policies to a more environmentally and nutritious food system. Next, we come to this article, transition without. Now coming to the next article. This article is basically concerned with the green energy transition. So some learnings that have taken place in the previous years. Okay. So I've just summed it up. So first of all, what we say is that if we want to move towards green energy, so we need to, obviously presently a source of energy is fossil fuels, be it for e-mobility, for running of the vehicles, right? It runs on petrol, diesel, or be it in terms of generation of electricity through coal-based power plants. So best thing that we can see right now is electrification. Because on electrification, obviously electricity is there, household electricity, plus your e-mobility can also take place. EVs, etc. can also run. But this electricity should be generated via renewable means. Solar energy, wind energy, etc. Now, all we know, we also know that renewable energy is not constant. There is a lot of instability. So one thing is we need to have battery storage. So we need to store electricity. For example, solar energy. Sun will not be there in the evening. We may be needing more electricity during the night time. So we need to store it. Find a way of storing the electricity. Second is because of the inconsistencies and the fluctuations, we would need an alternative source of energy as well, which can supplement the shortcomings in the renewable energy. Right. So we would need, we may need fossil fuels also, or we need nuclear power energy also. Okay, so that is learning number 1 for you. Moving on. Now, for moving towards the green energy transition, the countries are working on incentivizing green energy capacity. So for green energy capacity, it is creating infrastructure for sustainability, etc. So that is being done by countries, European Union, US, etc. Now, when they are doing this, and when they are saying that their industries, for example, European Union, if they're saying that our industries should work on clean energy, so naturally it is leading to costs. The private companies have to spend more to be able to manufacture using sustainable practices, using renewable sector. It costs more than previously. So this has to be protected. So let's say when they are trading, when international trade is going on, and let's say something being made in India or something made in China with unclean sources of energy, so in that case, their items will be cheaper when it comes to Europe. So their domestic sector, their domestic investments have to be safeguarded at the same time. So we see the example of European Union, not mentioned in this article, which is starting with this carbon border adjustment mechanism. Right? So the exports that are coming from India, China, whichever place, they will be subject to some additional tax, so that to offset the cost advantage these countries are having. So the first point is many governments are incentivizing investors to create green energy capacity, but at the same time raising high fences to protect the investment. For example, carbon border adjustment mechanism. Second, now if we move towards transition from fossil fuel based energy to green, in that case, there will be some social consequences, or it may affect different sections of the society differently, or we can say distributional consequences. That is what the author has stated. So he's giving an example. For example, coal miners will be disadvantaged. So coal industry will be disadvantaged. So the livelihoods of those people who were dependent on coal will get compromised, while a new sector will emerge, which will be in renewables. And with renewables, we can talk about electricity, battery, solar cells manufacturing. So those sectors will come up. So new sunrise sector will emerge. So the policymakers have to take a call as to how they want to go about it. Their interest can also not be compromised. Their welfare cannot be compromised also. Third point, we cannot leapfrog. All countries say that, all political leaders said, we will move from fossil fuel to green based energy, but actually we cannot leapfrog. We cannot go from 1 to 3. It is not possible. What we are witnessing right now is that in the recent years, the countries, be it European Union, be it US, they are giving more subsidies on fossil fuels so that the prices are checked, so that the consumers are not affected. The inflation is checked. So more subsidies. So you see the contradiction over here. One hand, the governments are saying that we want to move towards green, but at the other hand, the governments are giving subsidies for fossil fuels so that the consumers are not affected. The main reason is that we cannot leapfrog. We cannot just go from one to this, because there are inherent shortcomings with the renewable sources of energy. One, I told you about, let's say, renewable electricity, but renewable electricity may not be constant. For example, let's say during the day itself, the intensity of the sun may vary. So with that, the amount of electricity generated, so it may not be stable connection. So it has to be supplemented by other sources of energy. Plus, we cannot just say that from tomorrow, from the next year, we all will have EVs, electric vehicles. People will be running fossil fuels. People will be running on the LPG connections. So if their price increases, it affects the welfare of the common people. Next, we are going to see geopolitical rivalries when it comes to strategic metals, minerals, etc. such as lithium, nickel, cobalt, semiconductors. So for that, it's going to happen. Okay, so these are some of the learnings. Now coming to the NK Singh interview. So you see how long it is. And this is the one which actually took me a lot of time and gave me a blurry vision actually. Okay. Yes. So NK Singh, the former IS officer, went into study of economics. Okay. So a lot of important, and there is an NK Singh committee also which you should read. It is about fiscal deficit. What should be the ideal fiscal deficit target? Okay. So this NK Singh is helming a committee, a G20 expert group concerning the multilateral development banks, which is your World Bank. Your World Bank has here, it is mentioned as IBRD. Okay, so IBRD, your there are other multilateral development banks also, like Asian Development Bank, Asia Infrastructure Investment Banks, not mentioned in the articles. I'm just saying there are others. New Development Bank, NDB of the BRICS. So many others are there. So what key learnings that we can share now? So one thing is that with the issue of pandemic, climate change, so the thing is, how much capital are we going to need? Urban infrastructure, poverty, how much capital is required? These banks, right? Banks with they lend not for profit, but for also bringing about a social change. So how much capital is needed? So they studied this. They are saying that from now to 2030. Now 2023 half is done. Till 2030, we need $3 trillion US dollars per annum. So that much amount of funding is required. Right. So a lot of money is required. Okay. Now, obviously, we do not have that much amount of money. So it has to be. So for this, we need to do certain things. We may focus on, the first thing would be that these banks should focus on balance sheet optimization. Balance sheet optimization basically means how well you utilize your resources. So that is the first step that may be taken. Then the banks should focus on leveraging. Here an example is given of the World Bank. So World Bank is capitalized at just $20 billion. World Bank, right? So $20 billion, but it has lent already $900 billion. So 20 it has, and it has lent $900 billion. So something like that has to be done. They have to leverage more. Okay. And then the rest money should come from the private sector. The private sector should also play a role. Like we have public-private partnerships, something like that maybe. So private sector has to pull in $500 billion, and all of them are yearly per year. Okay, so that is one thing. Second is, how can we enhance concessional lending? So fine, concessional lending means soft interest rates, longer tenure of loans. So how that can be done? Because concessional lending is particularly required for a country in crisis or in lesser developed stage. So they require, for example, the African nations, the sub-Saharan region. So that may require. So how can we do that? What are the possibilities? That has not been elaborated. Third, how can we change the work culture, processes, and procedures? Here the focus is on the World Bank. So these banks have become highly bureaucratic. They lack innovation. Right. So we need to be creative when as to be how to leverage and balance sheet optimization and all those things, how we can give more loans. But these have become more and more bureaucratic in its nature because of its long time or for whatever reason. So how that attitudinal change may take place. So that is very much required. They also studied the possibilities of giving more autonomy to the multilateral development banks. So these are the main issues that were covered over here, not elaborated as to how these should be done, but we can actually use them in our answer writing with just these terms that this has to be done. I think that's good enough. And yes, we can also say depoliticization of the World Bank and the IMFs, etc. So that was also covered. So more autonomy means depoliticization also. Now we come to the economy section. I have realized that international page was the first page. I have to cover that also. Okay, so you can see there are these couple of articles that we need to do. This is the one which is most important. Okay, so let's do this one first. This is banks relying on retail to grow. Some expert is there. He says RBI raising rates at this point chances are very, very less. It is possible that the banks will increase the deposit rates. I am going to focus over here. And this thing was covered previously also. So it's just a quick recap. So why will the banks increase the deposit rates? First of all, I hope you know what is a deposit rate. When you open your bank account and when you deposit money, you get an interest. Irrespective, your money is with the bank, you get a nominal interest. So that is deposit rate. So this deposit rate is likely to go up. Why? So the reason is, one, bond yields have increased. So there are these banks, then there are these bond yields. So the bond yields have increased, maybe accounting for inflation, etc. Okay. So if the bond yields have gone high, so people would like to park their money in institutions that issue bonds and not banks. Right. So that may be a possibility. So that may be a reason to do so. So banks, if the banks increase their interest rates, so they'll be able to offset this increase in the bond yields or the return on the bonds. So banks will again become more attractive, and banks need more capital at this point of time for their lending operations or for meeting the credit needs. It is banks earn by giving out credit at a higher interest. So that is one. Secondly, recently you must have heard about the rupees 2000 thing, rupees 2000 to be withdrawn. So people were told that if you want to surrender this 2000 rupees, you can give it to the banks. Now, suddenly banks have a lot of money. Right? Banks have a lot of money because in the form of 2000 rupee notes, plus this income tax and all those things were also there, ITR, etc. So banks have a lot of capital. So as a measure to suck out this liquidity, the RBI introduced incremental cash reserve ratio. It is I think 10%. So because of this incremental cash reserve ratio, this is a temporary arrangement. The capital available with bank has come down. So the banks want to attract capital by increasing the deposit rates. Next article, the most important one. India is trying to sell, or let's put it this way, a look at India's key foreign policy sell. Recently, when Prime Minister Modi goes to any country, be it France or any other country, they say that we have a wonderful digital public infrastructure. So they're selling this idea of digital public infrastructure, which India has as an attraction, making it attractive to do work and business with India. So what is this digital public infrastructure and why India is trying to promote it? Okay, so that we will cover. So this digital public infrastructure, it is branded as the India Stack. So it is also known as the India Stack. Now, what is India Stack? It is the moniker of a set of digital codes and digital public goods that aim to unlock economic primitives of identity, data, and payments. Fine, you have a definition of the India Stack. So, in short, anything digital that the government has is digital public infrastructure. That you will not write, you will write this definition which is given. Okay, now the components have been elaborated. The first point that you came across was digital identity. So it is Aadhaar, and Aadhaar which also has biometric authentication. So it is likely to be more reliable. Now, whatever the people have to do for that, Aadhaar card is required. For documentation, anything Aadhaar card is required. So with that, a lot of data is also there. Then we have the Unified Payments Interface, UPI, which is about making cashless payments. UPI is in the custody of National Payments Corporation of India. No, so UPI has been developed by this NPCI, and this platform has been further given to private entities like PhonePe, Google Pay, Paytm, etc. So you must have seen when you go to Google Pay app, you type your password, Google Pay opens, then you have to make a payment, right? Then you have to put the UPI pin. So when we have the Google Pay interface, the Google Pay interface connects you with the UPI, which in turn connects you with the bank. So Google Pay is just the interface, PhonePe is just the interface, the private one. This is the UPI through which it's connecting you basically with the UPI. So this has been given free of cost to these private entities. And we all know how it has been a game changer in making cashless payments. Okay. Besides this, the next point was identity. Payments we have covered, now data. So we have data empowerment and protection architecture. So this has been developed. And name goes, I think it's self-explanatory, protection architecture. Okay. Besides, the government has been working on creating, co-win app, DigiLocker, your documents in the digital format can be accessed. Arogya Setu app, government e-marketplace. So a lot of other initiatives are also there with digital. So all of them collectively are part of the India stack, which is nothing but digital public infrastructure. And what India has done, truly speaking, it's unmatched worldwide. Okay. Now, in the G20 summit, also Prime Minister Modi was promoting it, and he said that India's stack, or this public infrastructure, is an ideal testing lab for solutions that can be replicated globally. So what we have developed, India has developed, that can be replicated globally. It is tried and tested with India. Okay. Now, why is India promoting it? It's promoting it because it wants to acquire leadership of the global south. And when it comes to digital public infrastructure, China is having the leadership in physical infrastructure. So India wants to differentiate itself by focusing on the software side of things. All of this is basically software, right? Aadhaar, UPI, co-win app, Arogya Setu, all of them are on the software side. So India wants to play a key role in the deployment of digital public infrastructure and maintain the global digital public infrastructure repository, which is a virtual repository of DPI, voluntarily shared by G20 members. Repository is where data is kept or anything is kept, storage. Right, so I want you to prepare this. Write a short note, define what is India stack, digital public infrastructure, mention the key components, the same sequence, just do it. You will be fine, in your answer writing, you'll be fine. Next, again, is an important theme. I forgot to mention it, that starting paper, internationalization of rupee. So goal of rupee internationalization. China has been doing it, now India also. So yeah, so we want internationalization of rupee. We want global trade to take place in rupee, but India does not have that might of US. All trade is happening in US dollar, or now China is saying that internationalization of their currency, but their currency, lot people have, buying and selling is taking place, but India has a disadvantage in that regard. Okay, so what is India doing for internationalization of rupee? So it is saying that countries which need money, maybe countries which are facing sanctions, let's say Iran or any other country, country which needs capital, needs money, they can borrow rupees from India, right? So India gives them rupees, and with these rupees, they can buy things from India, or they can get imports from India. Okay, so that is the arrangement, that is the framework. So this framework will be out. This will be out soon. Now this will benefit India in the sense that India will not need forex dependence on the forex reserves, dollars in particular. So, and it will also help better integration of the economies of the two countries which are trading in rupee. Now, let me explain how it may work. This has been in works already, actually. For example, Iran, let's say, has sanctions, right? So Iran now needs things maybe from India. So what they can do is they can borrow money from India. So they get rupees. With these rupees can be spent and they can buy things from India. So Indian industry is satisfied. And with this rupees, maybe India can buy this crude, etc., from Iran. So that may be a possibility. Okay. So that's it actually. Just let me cover the international page. This is the world page now. So yesterday okay, before that, ASEAN summit is going to take place, and Thailand's new prime minister will be missing this summit. The summit is taking place in Indonesia. Moving on. Yesterday we heard about a possibility of a talk between Putin and Erdogan. It should be taking place today, actually, Monday. Okay, so Putin and Erdogan. Putin, obviously, president of Russia. Erdogan is Turkey. So they were supposed to talk and how the Black Sea grain deal can take place. That is how grains can be exported from Russia and Ukraine to other parts of the world. It is important for food security. But when we hear about these talks, Russia has targeted places from which the grains could have been exported. Previously also this has happened. So drone attacks in Odisha region. Odisha is having a port through which exports can take place. Internet snapped in Gilgit, Baltistan, right? So this is in Kashmir. This is in the Pakistan occupied Kashmir region. When Gilgit, Baltistan, this is the area in control of India, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. Patience of business in US is wearing thin. Raimondo tells China. Now, who's Raimondo? I hope I'm pronouncing it right. So she is the commerce secretary, or we can say she is an equivalent of a commerce minister, right? So she was she's a US from US. She has gone to China. Negotiations are going on. So she has raised certain concerns. She's saying that there are a lot of US companies who are operating in China. Now their patience has come down. Why? Because of lack of a level playing field. The Chinese companies are being preferred, right? So that is a level playing field is not the same. So that is their technology, transfer of technology and all those things. It's done in such a way that Chinese companies are benefited. Second is absence of a predictable environment. No, this we can add a lot of things to it. So first point that is mentioned over here is that China is having a major economic concern, which is mentioned as country gardens spiraling dead crisis. So country gardens spiraling dead crisis. So Country Garden is a company, Chinese company, which is very big real estate company. So they are likely to go bankrupt, and it's a very, very big company. If it happens, it will affect the macroeconomic health of China. Right. So there is non-transparency over this matter. Then macroeconomics also, we do not know, like data is not there, how Chinese economy is doing, what is the condition of the labor. We don't have that data. Like in India, you get a lot of data about inflation, etc., etc. China, there is non-transparency on these matters. It is also felt that the systems are gamed or influenced to showcase China in good light. Okay. Then there are capital controls, right? So let's say people have parked their money in China. China, to protect its stock market or whatever, they may say that money cannot go out of China. Money can come in China, but money cannot go out of China. So these capital controls may be invoked at any time. So there is an insecurity that if somebody has parked money, foreign national, into China, their money will get locked in China. Then obviously there are geopolitical tensions, like possibility of a Taiwan war with Taiwan. That would mean that US and China are in opposition. US-based companies in China will definitely be at a disadvantage. South China Sea dispute. Then we are talking about the trade wars between US and China. So that is again a concern. Then this controversy about the spy balloon found in USA, Chinese spy balloon. So that is also there. Then even with the COVID also, so COVID took place in China. The theory was there, so that again undermined the interest of the US companies in China. So as a result, nowadays we are seeing the companies resorting to China plus one strategy. They're saying that, see, we cannot move out of China. Maybe Apple may say that yes, we have invested deeply in China, but we cannot move out. But we should consider the possibility of having another center. So India is being looked. India can be that one. That India investments can come to India. That is a possibility. Quietly crushing a democracy, millions on trial in Bangladesh. So this is picked up from the New York Times. It's basically saying that Awami League, a pro-India political party in Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, who's the prime minister now. So they are gradually, picking up on the opposition, particularly Bangladesh Nationalist Party, which happens to be pro-Pakistan. They are getting the supporters arrested. Judicial actions are taking place on one matter or the other. So as a result of this, the opposition is getting ineffective. So quietly, they are crushing a democracy. Only this party will remain. Okay, so that's it. So this concludes the news analysis. Thank you for streaming into our channel, IASPrimers, with me, Shubhashish. Bye-bye and